Hello everyone, Exilium here, and today I kind of want to take a look at pull priorities based on just kind of my thoughts on the game and what's coming up. Now I have the newest, most updated CN tier list that I've seen some of the other creators using. Now it's coming from a video on Bilibili. I couldn't find like an actual version of this without the text on it, so it's kind of just going to have to be this way. Now you can't really see all the tier 4s, but it's pretty, you can kind of tell who they are from the image. Now, one thing is when it comes to poll priorities, I'm not going to completely 100% take into consideration where they are on some tier list. There's a lot. You have to take a lot of this with a it's not going to be the best in making decisions. Now, some of the top ones are extremely good, especially with how much the meta has shaken up with Springfield coming out. Because the reason they basically have Tololo, Sabrina moved up, all the Hydras have moved up. And that's because Springfield is just that broken. Now, one thing you do know is you need multiple teams in this game. And then when you get to level 50, even on the boss battles that we currently have, that actually has where you're going to require 3 teams. And so it's not the best gauge. And this isn't the kind of game where you need to really think about that anyway. You're going to want to go for your favorite units. And so when it comes to my poll priorities on this, I'm kind of taking into consideration some of my just thoughts on specific characters and their kits and some of the core ways they can sync up and how you can kind of conserve your polls with the predicted order, because there's kind of a predicted order on when they're going to be coming out. And the main thing you want to do is pull units that all synergize well together. Because that's more important than just getting the top best ones. Because if you pull Kluke, you have Tololo, you have Springfield, you just pull these ones and then you bring Belka here. If you try and make a team out of them, if they came back to back to back to back, then, I mean, that's not a core. That's like not a good synergistic team, even though it's all T0 and T1. Synergies are going to be more important than that. And we can already know that just from some of the current teams we're having. Like if you are going to build one around Jang Ju here, she's that fire burn unit. Her best friend is Sharkry, and they have her on tier 3. And one of the things and one of the reasons I'm pulling on Makiato on the next banner is not only just to get Makiato, but I want to max out dupes on Sharkry. Because even though she's still tier 3 in the CN version, if you're going with Jang Ju here at tier 1, you're bringing Sharkry right along with her. Sharkly comes with Jang Ju in order to do maximum damage, especially once you get the 3 dupes of Jang Ju, because then Jang Ju does the overburn that Sharkly needs to just kind of do her own support actions. And so tier lists are not going to lead to give you all the answers. And then you have the situations of Tololo was, I believe, down in tier 2 or 3 before Springfield came out. Springfield elevated her up because she just got a buff on her expansion key that basically makes it where she can use her extra turn every turn. That made her absolutely broken. Not every unit has gotten expansion keys at this point, and one thing I've noticed is they seem to, while they are bringing out power creep, Springfield's like that first really big showing of that power creeping Suomi, they are willing to bring old characters back up into relevance in terms of giving them the expansion keys. And so like Vetplay, one they have rated low and everybody kind of jokes on as being bad, I can very easily see her becoming a tier 0 with an expansion key they give her in the future, because she's actually really good right now, and I just think she's getting under valued right now because of a lot of the other units we're kind of having to think about. All right, so now let's kind of get into my poll priorities here. So what we have knowledge of coming up is we know Makiato's coming up next. I've already kind of discussed that in some of my prior videos. I think she's an absolutely great pull for right now, because she does synergize with Suomi, especially if you have her weapon. But that getting that core ice team together right off the bat is going to be really good. I mean, it's kind of the reason I believe they moved her in the poll order. They brought her all the way up, even though I believe she was the 5th one to come out for CN. And that's just simply because they're trying to get people to have that dumped everything on Suomi to now have to spend money to get her. So to me, she is a very good pull for just about everybody at this point, because I would expect everybody to have gotten Suomi. So right there. Then we have what's coming up next is going to be what's predicted based on the Korean leaks. They have the next 2, which was Dian here. She's like a physical, highly mobile unit, Vanguard for Girls Front. And then after her, it's expected to be Sinarusi, the fire healer. And they have, that's crazy to me, they have her all the way down at tier 3 on this. Now, even I mean, I know that she's basically power crept because of Suomi and Springfield are basically the new healers in CN. Like they're your healers, and she kind of gets moved down because of that. And I've seen a lot on her when it comes to your pull priorities because Exina here is actually better on the buff side of things for the burn team, which kind of reduces her value on that and to be a more of a healer. Just that's what she is. She's just your default healer, best with burn teams, but can be your second healer regardless. And so the problem is you have Jang Ju, Exina, Sharkri, and that is your core. And then as soon as Vector comes out, those are your main four when you do four. And then you can bring Cinerusi if you have like a five, something that requires 5 units. And so that's why they have her down here. For us, though, I have her higher priority than Dian coming out. So basically, we already got Suomi. I'm saying you probably want to pull it like Makiato. Makiato is just good for your ice team. So she's a top priority for me. And I'd say just about anybody should pull on her coming out because she's just that good. And if you're like a light or even medium spender, I like what I'm personally doing is going actually for her V1 because that makes her really, really good. It increases her damage significantly to the point that she can match Jang Ju on the single target DPS and once she gets her full team set up. So they have her. That's to me top priority of the group. Then Dian, she is good. She has mobile. She's very mobile. She is really, really good if you get a lot of her dupes, especially if you get her V3 and V6. That's not worth it at this. Like getting all the way to V. I know there's a lot of talk about how great some of these have on their V3s and V6s. That's absolutely not worth it unless you're a whale at this point. Even in the future, it's to me a whale thing. Just because they're always going to have more units coming out, and you just want to keep getting the units in this game, especially kind of what this game's designed around. I mean, it's a waifu game. You want more of them versus just having one really strong one, at least in my opinion. But so she is to me, the easier of the skips between her and Cinerusi. Now she has a really, really cool skin, which you've probably seen in the thumbnail. So if you're into that, then she's probably a must pull because she has a really, really good skin in that aspect. But she, to me, is a pickup later. We're going to have to see how my luck goes with Makiato. But I'm going to be trying to pull for just about everybody because I'm spending a decent amount of money on this game. But for me, for a majority of people, I think she is the easier skip because Cinerusi is going to be really nice comfort for being able to complete the endgame content with our limited characters that we're going to have at this point. So having Suomi, I mean, anyone that's doing the boss battles at this point already knows when you're doing that first fight, you're probably bringing Suomi, and then you're able to beat that no problem. And then you're struggling on that second boss because you have a lack of healing. And so, like, if you've watched my streams, I'm using, and I'm not saying I'm really good or anything, but I'm using Exina here, and she can kind of heal, but it's definitely noticeable that it would be nice to have someone that had that AoE healing capabilities to just make it a lot more comfortable. Because the problem isn't I'm running out of turns I'm beating it, it's that I'm dying before I can beat it, or I'm close to dying before I beat it. And so I would definitely prioritize her over Dian there. Now, we also now have some people who are kind of guessing the next few units, and they're going off the how they were ordered before. So we had Suomi and Alred come out. And so people are thinking, and the estimates I've seen with other creators, is we're going to get all of the units that came before them out in kind of a scrambled order, which we already see with Makiato. And then after that, we'll see probably the half-year anniversary, which will most likely have Kluke come out. And then after that, they'll kind of reorganize or reorder how we get the people after them. And it's going to be like that couple months. It's not going to be just they give us Springfield the next patch or in a couple months. It's still going to be, they're going to be in that general time frame, is from what I understand, is what many people are predicting, even though the banner orders will be different. Some of the events will be rewritten, and that might be a reason they've also reordered some of the banners, because from what I understand, the first events kind of weren't that good. One of the big ones that they had a lot of drama over was Dian and her event. So I'm guessing that's been completely rewritten. And so it probably is going to be a lot better, hopefully up to the same standards we had with our current event, which was really great. So that could be the reason they shuffle them up anyway, too, is just so they can kind of rework some of the earlier events which had a lot of negative feedback on them. And so you got those. So then we most likely are going to see Lena and then Jang, or I don't know how to pronounce her name, but Lena, basically the like lightning. They're both lightning units that can do electric. So Lena's more of a CC type, and then Jang is kind of like a damage. I believe she has a lot of action support in her kit type, and so we'll actually look at their kits over here. Of those two, I would suspect it's going to be Jang Ju first, most likely. Just my guess, as she's considered a little bit of the weaker one of the two, of her and Lena, at least in my opinion. Mainly because she relies heavily on dupes. So I could see them bringing her after, and then immediately after Lena. So if you go over her, you absolutely want to go over Lena. And when it comes to my priorities of these two, it's absolutely going to be Lena over her. And one of the biggest reasons, and this isn't even just Lena herself, but Lena's a really good CC. And eventually, I mean, they'll bring out a character that makes the electric units broken in the future just as well, bringing all these units up. So that's why I say don't worry about those tier lists. Right now, they're shown lower on the tier, and they may not be able to do as good as the other teams, but they do quite fine on their own, and they will be easily elevated up once they just get their own Springfield in their element, or someone that really complements their kits to bring them up. So you have to kind of pull based on what you like, not where they're on the tier. And one of the reasons I like Lena is it's not even just Lena herself. She has a really good CC capabilities in her kit, but a reason I would say that she's going to be great for just about anyone also, and it's just going to be good for all your teams, is her common key is, to me, one of the better ones. And it's because you get that crit 5%, which a lot of units want that crit. But then it's also when the user deals single target damage, applies conductance on the target for 1 turn. So if they do single target damage, they can put conductance on them. And that's the one where you can get the enemy paralyzed. So after they do the damage, it can then be converted to paralyzed on the next attack. And so this one can be paired really well with anyone that has support action type deals as a way to kind of, and this doesn't even have to be on an electric unit. I mean, this is just that common key, so you can put it in anyone. And this works really nicely. And this is actually one of the few SMGs that's limited that I think would actually be a good pull. And this is more about units than weapons. But Lena's weapon pairs really well. So if you get Lena, it's one of the few. She has one of the few limited weapons that I think just works on just about anybody as long as you have her key. And that's because the one condition with it that is required to kind of hit that extra percentage damage that you see in all the limited weapons that kind of makes them unique to their unit, it just requires them to apply conductance. It deals additional fixed damage. So her common key on all single target attacks is applying conductance. And so your single damage SMG damage dealers can use this SMG easily, and they will get that advantage of the extra damage, and then it gives them that percentage chance to apply paralyzed for 1 turn. So to me, her weapon or SMG is a really good one to pick up as well. And so if you were thinking about pulling on weapon banners at any point, I think this is a good generic one, as long as you pull Lena, because it will rely on that common key to really trigger this extra damage there. But of those, yes, Lena is my higher priority. Jang Ju is good. She does want a lot of dupes to get really the maximum. And from what I can tell here, she is really broken on V6. And if you were going to whale on like 1 unit, like she's the one that I thought if I'm going to whale, I probably would love to do it on her. Just because of, 1, she's not going to be used as heavily. From my understanding, she's also really good at PvP. You're not going to, the big thing is you're not going to see as much at first. So you're going to kind of have that unique unit when it comes to like the PvP and other content type stuff. But when you look at her V6 and V3s that really kind of bring her back up to par here. So this one, the V3, if the skill counters enemy weakness, increases her skill point gain by additional 2 points and then reduces it by 1 turn. And then the V6 is one that before using an active attack, if they have electric type debuffs, which they pretty much always will if you build her team correctly, increases damage dealt, and then decreases the contamination gauge or her skill point use for preemptive strike by 1 point. And what really makes it, I mean, what's really big with her is she is this preemptive strike is what her big thing is, and it's built into her passive here. is that before using an active attack, if they have electric debuffs, increases damage dealt by 10% at start of turn. If she has a maximum contamination gauge or maximum skill points, gains preemptive strike for 1 turn. And so it's like a better version of what Jang Ju has. Basically, what preemptive strike is, before an enemy attacks, she'll attack them first, but it consumes the 3 of her skill points. And so that's why they say she's really hard to use, because you can basically only use it twice, and you can't get those skill points really quickly to go into that preemptive strike mode. But that V3 makes it where she basically gets the skill points quicker, a lot quicker, and that V6 reduces that cost by 1. So now she can do, I believe, 3 preemptive strikes now rather than 2. And so that is massive, and she'll actually work really well with other people. Like if you have her at V6 with Jang Ju, she's going to preemptively strike, and then Jang Ju can attack alongside her, or anyone else that has action support. And so I think she's a really good whale character, but if not, if you weren't really going to go that far, it's really hard to take advantage of that preemptive strike because it takes time to build up the skill points. And then it goes through them like that. You can do 2. And so she's the easier skip unless you were going to, you don't even have to whale at this point. Like I would get her, if you wanted to get her V6 in the future, like get a couple dupes now and a couple later. But if you're not going to do that, you don't plan, she's the one that I'd say is easy to skip, because Lena has more universal use than she does. And then after that, we're getting around that 6-month point where we can expect Cluke to come out. And this is kind of going to be the last point I'm going to go over. I'm not going to go over any future units after Cluke because there's so much unknowns at that point. But we're fully expecting Cluke to probably come out around the same time because Cluke is part of the main story. She came out alongside chapters 9 and 10 from what I've seen. And that was at the Midyear anniversary for the game. And so I fully expect them to kind of try and stay with that kind of to CN, because it had its own massive stuff with it, big story update. And they do not want to catch us up to CN. The whole dual banner with Ulrich and Suomi was just like a one-time thing. And so I suspect she'll come at that mid-year point, so after those units most likely. And she is the biggest, and I think everybody knows this, she is probably the best of the must-pulls in terms of getting a damage dealer. And the funny thing is, she is extremely good. She has that massive AoE damage. She makes everyone else irrelevant. So everybody's Lada Lada is just completely overshadowed by her and anyone else like that. And one of the biggest things with her too is she doesn't even have her full synergistic team at this point. When I say by her full synergy team, there is no corrosion healer or sustain type yet. There is just, you have her, and then you have a unit that's going to be coming after her that I would say is going to be a great one to pull on, which is Mekti, which is good generically with teams, but goes extremely well with Cluke. And then Cluke has a unit that you can basically farm for in Parita, and then Parita can make it where Cluke and her together can actually do really good single target damage. So you have that'll work really well. But she is, to me, an absolute great one to pull on. Even if and her V3 is really good, and everybody's saying you got to get her V3. I'd say that is true, but don't worry about getting it immediately. She's going to rerun this game. From what I've seen, they do rerun units plenty enough. At this point, depending on how lucky you've been and how many pulls you've saved up, I'd say maybe just get one, or maybe try and get that V1 on her. Get her and get her copy. She's going to be good there. And then maybe push for V3 on a rerun. Because I think she is going to she's going to be broken when we get her. And I think she's going to be even more broken in the future when we finally get that final piece of the corrosion puzzle. But she'll be great right off the bat. So that's not something you have to worry about just because she doesn't have her full team at that point. So with that on my poll priorities, let's kind of look at where everybody is on the tier list and kind of why you might want to not really think about using tier list to make your decisions. And that is because one of the ones that I say is probably the highest priority coming out soon. They have down here in T3, and that's Cinerusi. And it is because they say she does get outclassed when it comes to having the 2 healers with Springfield and Suomi. But right now, I don't expect Springfield anytime soon. And if we're not going to get Springfield anytime soon, you want that comfort now to make that content easier, because you need to complete the content to be able to get the tickets, to get the polls. And so she's going to just make it much easier. She's going to work really well with the burn team all the way until we get Vector, because Vector is going to be kind of that final piece for the fire team, and she would replace Cinerusi, and then you would just take Exina in that where you just need damage versus being able to do sustain at the end game when you're fully kitted out. But she's going to just be good right off the bat. She's going to be, she has a nice common key where you can put that common key on anyone to get a little bit of extra healing. And so even though you'll see a lot of people, I've seen so many of the content creators saying skip her because she's not good. And that's just, to me, that's just not true. She has more value than that. She has the heals. Her common key is always going to be good. And it's kind of the same thing with Lena. I don't know why they have her on such a low on this tier list. Maybe it's just because Lightning it's not viewed as being fully complete at this point. I mean, we'll have Belka coming out in the future, but I think she can work generically with most teams. She doesn't need that core Lightning team, which is why the other ones are lower down here with Moza Nagant, Jang Ju, and Lena. But I guarantee you we're going to have that Lightning sustain. It's going to pull the same thing Springfield did, and the Lightning sustain is going to come out, and it's going to just elevate all these up to the top. And so now the priorities of them to me is Lena, because she has that immediate value. I don't care about them having her on tier 3 here. So those are the two main ones of the upcoming ones, Cinerusi and Lena. After Makiato, which I tell pretty much anyone to pull when she's coming out in our next banner. So the ones that are easier to skip to me are Dian and Jang Ju, unless you're kind of wanting to be a heavier spender and you're willing to go a little bit deeper into dupes, whether it's when you get them initially or you get a few dupes of them first, and then when they rerun, get more dupes. Then I'd pick one of the two that you'd probably want. Jang Ju, from my understanding, is really good at PvP, so she'd be a good target for that. And then after that, the Midyear Cluke, everybody knows Cluke is broken, and she doesn't even have the broken sustain out for her team yet, if they're going to have one. And so if the corrosion gets the equivalent of Springfield on the corrosion side, and then Cluke is just going to go from tier 0 to tier negative, whatever. She's going to be above and beyond everybody else, just because of what they did with Tololo. So just with that, take the tier list with a grain of salt. Even Pride wins global tier list because they try and put them on the tier list based on what we currently are at. But it doesn't paint the whole picture because you got to think of the synergies and how well they work together. And so there is just kind of my thoughts on it. It's really just about kind of trying to keep your teams good for all of the foreseeable future. So kind of building on those synergies and then getting new units that are good as they come out, because the meta is always going to be evolving. They're going to throw more units like Springfield out there that's going to shake up this whole list. They have shown they're willing to give expansion keys to bring people back from the bottom. So you could very easily see any of these SSRs go all the way back up to tier 0 on most people's tier list just with an expansion key. That's what happened with Tololo and Springfield coming out, and we can see that happen with any of these other units. So go more based on what you like. This is just my personal list of priorities, and I'm just kind of giving some ideas and some thoughts on it. But let me know in the comments what your priorities are. I know some people are just more chasing the waifu type deals and getting the really nice skins. I mean, if you're that person, then Dian is a must pull. If you've seen her skin, it's a amazing skin. And so I would say, yeah, you have to pull on her if you're all about that. It's kind of the same with, Makiato has a really good skin too. So you're going to want to pull her and Dian. So it's going to be a tough one for you people who want the skins there. But yeah, don't worry about chasing the meta in this game. It's kind of what I'm kind of trying to say there, though. So if you like my content, if you could like, comment, and subscribe, it really helps. And thanks for watching.